Hello. Well, I'm back from Korea, and as you can see, back in Canberra, Australia, I actually have the National Library behind me. I'm out by a park. Um, this video is going to be about training and a training program. I might flip it around a little later so you can get a view instead of seeing me. So, what I want to do with a number of these videos is give you some free information so that you can always improve on your training. But if you want to take the pre-packaged programs that I've set up, then you can go to the website, which is www.wingchunqigong.com, and then just purchase the package. And it gives you everything in a nutshell, complete. So you don't have to go researching things and that sort of stuff, which is kind of what I do in these videos. I give you information, but you have to go and do the work. Obviously, I don't give you all the information that's in the courses because it just wouldn't make any sense. But it is still about helping people and getting more people to this site to recognize some of the different varieties of Wing Chun and also what it can provide. So let's start there with a program, and I might flip this over, see if you can get a view whilst I'm walking, because it's easier for me to hold the camera like this, and it's a nice view. It's a beautiful, beautiful sort of winter's day. It's really nice out here, except the trees have all lost their leaves since last time. So before I start ripping into a program and getting things sort of set up, I think one crucial thing is with anything in life, you got to map out what it is you're looking to achieve. You've got a goal set. And so, inside companies and so forth, they have projects and they have project managers that manage these things, and they set up programs around it, and they invest a lot of money. And you can see that in government projects. They try and do that when they want to, build infrastructure, or they build things. But, and if you ever look at any of those, corporate, government, a lot of projects fail. All right. And then there's those that succeed. So when it comes to you personally, and if you're setting up a project, which is your training program, it's best to follow the known methodologies of, say, a project management science. So you get the best chance of success. Now, the first thing, though, would be, setting that goal. So one of the things I like is they say SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. So you can't just say, I'm going to learn Wing Chun, right? Because it's too broad. What of Wing Chun are you going to learn? And, so it's not specific. Is there anything about that that's measurable? Not really. Is it achievable? Well, you haven't defined anything about it really, except it's a sort of this martial art called Wing Chun, but left everything else empty. Is that realistic? Well, actually, it kind of is. But if you really want to learn it and master it, you're going to need more. And time bound, well, you didn't set a time to it, right? So one of the other things is I wouldn't encourage going, well, I'm going to master Wing Chun in, X months or X years. Or I think the idea of saying I'm going to master Wing Chun, that's a lifetime endeavor. But you could set yourself a realistic goal of becoming, say, a Sifu in Wing Chun. And you might want to go talk to another Sifu that you've researched and respected and say, hey, I really want to achieve this. What am I looking at? What's the timeline? And then you can sort of set that. I was fortunate that I short-circuited all of this I knew I wanted to master it, and I knew at that time I was sort of, you know, a little, a little lost, you could say. The style I was doing, I found that when I practiced it and then went and saw the seafood, they were like, "No, it's not this. You got to do it like that." And then you finally get to do it with them, but then if they're not with you, you're not doing it. And there's this level of frustration that when you practice, were you really practicing it, or were you just practicing the wrong things? We'll get to that in a sec. So, how I short circuited all of that was I went and found a master who um, packaged it and was just going, I could download it on a month by month basis over a number of years. And that's exactly what I did. So, that's the best way to do it, right? And that's the idea of, in a sense, the courses I put up. None of this sort of long winded week by week until I accrue enough money from you, and then I can, okay, there's enough money, and I can give you some stuff uh, based on how much you've paid. Or I can't tell you too much because then if you open your own school and then I lose revenue, it's just, you know, none of those things. It's really about just getting things downloaded to you as quickly as possible. Now, one of the other things as you break down your goals, because you have to sort of go, look, I'm going to become a master of Wing Chun in X years, for example, maybe 2 to 3 to become a sifu, um, because there's not that many sets, right? And there's the dummy itself and all that sort of stuff. It's easily achievable to set a goal like that. That's what I did, and but then you have the tasks underneath that. Well, how do I go about doing that? And as I mentioned, the Sifu I had at the time, Greg Choi, who's a disciple of Grandmaster Yip Man, he had a program. And I simply just did the program. And if I had any questions, I asked him. Now, this is something else that's really important. If you've got a program you got to write up, you need to know exactly what you're doing. Okay. So you need to know, okay, I am working on such and such. And in order to master that, I have to do this technique. So I might go through a few of those now. And I'll give some examples. So when I went to a different lineage many, many years ago, the Choi Shun Tin lineage, and they spoke about something called structure. And then they'll talk about something called targeting. And they can then also talk about something related to coordination. That's the word they use, but that's what it is. And each of these had subcomponents. Now, I used to take many notes every time I took a class. I'd finish the class and write it all up. And I read those notes. I used to read them all the time, but since I've done these videos, I went back and had a read of them. And what was funny is those notes, at the time, I didn't really grasp what those things kind of meant. It was the information provided to me. It's not that it was incorrect, it was just a bit pithy. And my level of understanding of these things was very shallow. And so, although it's probably like a direct thing, hey, do this, um, it just wasn't really the seed wasn't getting planted. But although the notes I've written, and I look at it, um, it's right. But I know I can reflect back and go, you know what? I didn't really know structure to the ability that the Sifu was after. You know what I mean? And when I did targeting, sometimes I mix that with structure. And how do you keep them separate and things like that? So if you can't understand what it is that you're trying to achieve, then it's very unlikely you're going to achieve that thing. So make sure when you write something down, you know what it is, okay? Or uh, or at least you know the technique to achieve that thing. So I'm gonna, give you some examples, and you want to have a look at this. So if you look at Wing Chun, we know we've got the three forms, right? And let's say you were practicing those, and you're just like, well, I'm going to practice the forms because I'm doing solo training. I don't have a partner. And if that's all you're doing, then are you really going to achieve the best you possibly could? And you might want to break down into other um, uh, qualities, right? Like, say, Jin or force generation. Well, with these three forms, which one of them produces force generation? Am I am I training that in the forms? Am I, or when am I training it? What days would I train that? Do I train my force generation every day? Will that lead to injury? When I do train it, how long do I train it for? Um, so there are all these things where you need to sort of weigh them up and know when you're training it. Now, the other thing is there is strength training. You know, um, if you have a look at the pole form, for example, and they've got that near the end, but there is a horse stance they do, a very low horse stance that is very good for strengthening your legs, right? And building great power, great strength. So there's a form of strength training. And that's like at the end, something like that. Why does it need to be so far at the back? Um, so you might want to look at that and go, all right, well, what sort of strength training am I doing? And if you're like, well, it's just the Yi Kim Yang Ma stance, maybe there's some other things you might want to incorporate. Now, the other part you want to look at is flexibility, right? What is your level of flexibility? Do the forms offer you flexibility to achieve what you're after, right? I would say no. Um, and so, way back when I was going through some of these things, I was juggling yoga, I was juggling Wing Chun. Later, I was juggling calisthenics, and it was like, well, what's the right answer? What's this thing for to get the result we're after? What if I lift weights and you're not supposed to lift weights? And there was all of these sort of questions. But then, I've got all the answers to them now. But back then, I just didn't know. And if you don't know, you can't really set up a program and accelerate and improve yourself and get this thing knocked over within, like I said, like 2 years. Um, now, the other part is your fitness, right? And we have like CO2 max now to measure that and other pieces. Are you getting that, right? So how do you balance all of those things throughout the week? How do you balance that with, say, the way you sleep and eat and when you work and when you play? All of these things, they really need to be mapped out. If you want to, say to yourself, I'm going to be a Sifu. Because for me personally, the Wing Chun Qigong is a way I live my life. Now, there can be times when, I have deviated from that. And then I realized, no, that's not right. I need to come back and do these things. And I can do them less and less until I eventually don't do them at all. But I can only ever do that if I have that knowledge. So hopefully this video is giving you those list of things and I'll go through them again. Why don't we start at, and nourishing yourself. And, this we use the Qi Gong for. So, some people when they talk about qigong, they would say, "Hey, it's just the pressurization of the abdomen and breathing. That's all it is." That's not true. That's a half truth. But I'll give you that. At least you got to, you got to do that at least. But there's much more to it. You also look at your fitness. You look at what sort of strength you can generate, and then you look at how these fit into the form. I think a good example is if I'm an Australian and I grew up, you got to play either soccer or football, and you don't just like um, run out on the field and you start playing. You got your off season where I remember waking up Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and you had to hit the gym, and we were doing weight training, circuit classes, and then leading up to it, you would have training sessions where you throw the ball around with the guys. You have kicking practice. You would also get in your position, and you have teams play off against each other. You'd do set, line out, scrum, whatever it was, right? You'd drill that into you. So too with Wing Chun, um, the the game is when you're fighting with someone, or it could be multiple people, and so you need to have these qualities that I've provided of looking after your health and nourishing with qigong, flexibility, um, fitness, strength, speed, right? You also needed, there's a different type of force generation. There's a coordination in the way that you move your body that's different from other martial engines. And so you need to sort of know all of these things, and then you express them when you're doing the form. And if you're lucky enough, you do partner training so you can keep improving against and pressure testing with other people. If you don't have that, the wooden dummy is, I think that's exceptional in the way it was created and as a training tool. When I look around on the internet, the way I use the dummy and have been trained is very different from how I see other schools use it. And I'm not saying theirs is right or wrong and mine's the best or nothing like that, but it takes all of those qualities and you're using that on the wooden dummy. So that's a way of me to train with, if I don't have a partner. So again, hopefully those list of things, you can sort of now put that on a page, and they're the things you want to be mastering and working on. And hopefully it, if previously you thought, oh, well, I just do the forms, I can be king of Silnum Tao, or I could just do Chum Q, this will get me there. And well, not really. You see people who do the forms only, and as Bruce Lee, he learned in a sense the hard way. So why don't you learn from him? When he got himself in a fight with another martial artist, he was so disappointed in himself, even though he did win. He was so disappointed that he didn't execute the strength he wanted to up front. It took him a long time to win the match. And also he was exhausted by the end of it. He didn't have the stamina, right? So he went back and redid his whole training program. And, he would call the forms, swimming on land, right? So he's having to dig at them. Now, of course, they're not useless. The forms are actually really important. But if you're only doing the forms and not these other components of your fitness training, so you've got the stamina to last, and the power training so you can exert strength in very quick bursts, and speed training, and then you need to train with a partner or the dummy so you can work on your positioning and timing, which is different from speed, right? So they're all extremely helpful, but you can't be narrow-minded in thinking it's just the form. You need to really expand yourself, be scientific, and this video, I'm hoping, gives you that information that you have enough for a framework that you can look at your program that you probably currently have and have a look at any areas where you're like, um, I have been neglecting these sorts of things, and I need to find a way to bring them, you know, and incorporate them back into uh, my schedule. So, for example, you might be like, "Oh, well, I don't like doing cardio," like as an example, right? Well, when you know, coming in combat with somebody, that could be the difference between you getting gassed out and losing, um, and winning, right? So you don't have that luxury. You have to just go, I'm weak in this, so I need to work that more. If you're already good at something, here's another tip: you don't have to work it because you're already good at it. You can touch it up every now and then. But you don't have to wake up every day and smash away at that thing. What you should be doing is using this framework I've given you, and you map out all of your weaknesses within it. And they're the things that are unbalanced, and you need to bring them into balance. Now, I pick quick sort of plug about the course. That's why I've set up this course in such a way that it takes you through all of these items and just does it very specifically, bit by bit, week by week. And it provides you a syllabus that probably changes, every 2 months or so, every 2 to 3 months. It just depends, right? Each person's sort of different in how and the time they progress. But of course, it will never get boring. And you can, once you've got something learned, you can keep that in the back burner and have that as a touch up, but you have this thing that you need to do every day. All right, I'm going to leave it there. And if you made it this long, thanks for listening. And if you're interested, please go check out the course. I'll put some links below.